Welcome to Slash Forward. Hey, have you ever had an unusual itch behind the ear? Or experienced infant allergies that eventually just stopped one day? How about high-pitched shrieking inside your brain, lost chunks of time, or total blackouts? It could be that, unbeknownst to you, your body has become the plaything for an advanced civilization that has decided to visit Earth and explore every aspect of our bodies with their technology. Honestly, I can't blame them. Your body's worth exploring. This is the scenario presented by the subject of this video, the 2013 Blumhouse production Dark Skies. In an attempt to forego the common tropes, setting aside bright lights in the sky and livestock mutilations, this film attempts to explore a more grounded accounting of alien contact, under the assumption that any sufficiently advanced technology would give the appearance of being almost magical. And in this case, the only known strategy for dealing with these aliens is to learn to live with their probings and interruptions, and to put up as much of a fuss as possible in the hope they won't snatch one of your kids. What would you do to protect your family from aliens who seem capable of phasing through solid matter? Be sure to leave a comment below because I am keeping a log for my personal survival guide. Also, if you like the video, hitting the like button would help me out a lot. Let's get to it. We open on a quote questioning our place in the universe, which is deep. Before we open on a peaceful, picturesque, and very active suburban neighborhood. Literally, everyone is engaged in an activity of some type or another, including our protagonists, the Barretts. Daniel's got the meat going while they await the arrival of their guests. Young Jesse is called home to fulfill his familial responsibilities, cutting short his bro time, which appeared to be heading toward mutual masturbation. He heads home after sundown, where his family is gobbling down their dinner. Through casual conversation, we learn that Jesse longs to be taken seriously and viewed as a mature young man. Then, as they all settle in for the evening, Daniel learns he ranks out lower than real estate on Lacy's totem pole, and Jesse reads spooky stories to his brother Sammy over their walkie-talkies. Later on, Lacy goes to placate her restless leg syndrome with some midnight wanderings, and she comes across evidence that makes it appear they have been ransacked by a rabid ET. In the morning, they find it curious that the rambunctious critter they presume was responsible ate the lettuce out of the fridge but left behind the bacon, but they otherwise brush off the whole thing. We get some more general context as Daniel heads off for a big interview where he, unfortunately, brings the small dick energy, resulting in a likely instant rejection, which is revealed to be hell in regards to their financial sitch. Now stressed out to the max, he chooses to play things cool in front of the wifey. Always a sound strategy. That night, we get reassurance that the sliding door is locked before mom ends story time for the boys. She wakes up again and goes to check the locks, only to discover the animals have really been popping off in terms of their creative endeavors. After a quick check at the back door, Sammy confides that he had a dream in which the Sandman came to his room. The next day, with no evidence of forced entry, Officer Powell suggests this would have had to have been caused by someone with a key, or perhaps a sleep puzzler from inside the home. He leaves them with no intention to investigate further and the suggestion that they reactivate their alarm service. Lacy has a showing later for a young couple looking at a fixer-upper. She makes a strong connection with the mother, having gone through the stress of Jesse being a sickly child. Unfortunately, this genuine rapport removes her seller's edge.
You can probably do better.
Why wouldn't you be the one to show them? That night, we see the system has been re-engaged. Then, while watching TV in bed, Daniel hints at his poor job interviewing performance by casually suggesting they cut back on the cable. Unwilling to give up her HD TV, they both get set off. This leaves the boys to try to reassure each other through the comfort of shortwave radio. Thankfully, the alarm does its job. But other than unnerving everyone, it provides no other useful information, as it declares all sensors were tripped at the same time, indicating a malfunction. Daniel shares the encouraging news, but then follows Lacy's gaze. The sergeant of incredulity returns, and again tries to guide them toward investigating their own kids, as some people just do weird stuff in their sleep. This message is reinforced when the alarm guy doesn't find anything wrong with the system. So they all have a sit down for an old-fashioned family jam sesh, just to chat it out and try to ascertain anyone's motives or possible involvement in the strange happenings. Jesse still insists he was sleeping at the time, but Sammy clams up when Lacy asks about the Sandman, because he has been sworn to secrecy.
He told me not to say.
This leads to a parental freakout, which is aggravated by their trust issues. Despite the lack of photos in his room, they presume he's having some psychological trouble. They agree to pursue this further with a professional as Daniel scratches at a persistent itch behind his ear. The next day at the park, Daniel finds himself incapable of confiding in his best bud due to a crippling fear of being ostracized by his peers. This is exacerbated when Sammy goes ahead and pisses himself. Daniel tries to help him shake it off and move on, but Sammy is not having it. So back off, dickweed. Then back at home, a thematic classic, a child's picture containing an unnervingly foreign character. Although on the grand scale of things, this discovery absolutely pales in comparison to the hail of birds that then bomb their house. During cleanup out back, Dirty Kevin tries to pick up one of the birds and learns about avian flu for the first time. While out front, Mr. Barrett requests they do their best to try to figure this out because his family has been really stressed out lately and they don't need this adding to it. Later on, Sammy intimates that the episode he had at the park was caused by his psyche phasing into another realm of existence. So that's troubling. Again, Lacy wakes up after twilight, since no one's yet thought about trying to just stay up. As she walks the halls, she hears Sammy talking to someone and finds a slender man in his room. The lights reveal the room to be empty, but it doesn't take long for them to locate him slow streaking in the backyard. After they get settled back in, they wonder about how he managed to get out without setting off the alarm, and also how to interpret Lacy's visual hallucination. Daniel, of course, handles this with aplomb.
We've got enough to handle right now without getting crazy.
Sometime later, we see that Jesse has been using his mom's realtor code to get into vacant houses. Seems innocent enough until Kevin shows up with the girls and the weed. In a private moment, Jesse engages in some repartee with Shelley, but finds his one source of experience in these matters has failed him miserably. Nevertheless, she takes some measure of pity on him. He then rides home as if on a cloud, as though nothing could ever bring him down, but is soon sobered by an ominous foreboding. At home, the Barretts have invested heavily in beefing up their security measures. As Daniel calibrates, the boys try to stay calm and wonder aloud why Daddy is spying on them in their rooms. The hard drives spin as the night wears on, with everyone sleeping soundly in their respective beds. Daniel wakes up at his station and begins scrubbing through the video, but the only thing he finds is a short period of strange interference in the feed that seems to work its way through all the occupied rooms and back out again. Later on, we see Lacy back on that grind, and she's got a fish on the hook. Unfortunately, her pitch is derailed when she suffers a sudden episode that causes her to behave somewhat abnormally. Thankfully, she wakes up feeling only mildly unsettled. The dread begins to mount, however, when she finds a nasty bruise on her forehead. Then she gets a call from her boss Pete asking what up with freaking out her clients before he puts her on an involuntary furlough. After this, she gets a call from the Department of Wildlife. There were no traces of bird flu and it was 3 different flocks of birds, so explanations are not forthcoming. Unsure whether the agency has Alta Vista or not, Lacy decides to sit down and do some of her own research. She soon finds herself squarely inside the rabbit hole, uncovering evidence that suggests what's happening to them is not unique. But it's not all darkness, as Daniel has a cracking interview and scores a paying gig. This lightens the general mood and brings some much-needed relief, which is celebrated in grand style with a babysitter and some hardcore boning. Lacy wakes up alone and goes looking for Danny. She finds him outside staring at the stars with his O-face still locked in place. Then he leaks a bit and walks back in, tracking blood all over before snapping out of it. As they watch this unfold on the monitor, Lacy decides it's a good time to share her news of the day. She also shares her research, which points to a variety of governmental and extraterrestrial conspiracy theories. Despite the clear similarities and the risk of one of their children vanishing, Daniel can't bring himself to consult with the wacko subject matter expert who lives downtown. But the events of the next day promise to force their hand, as a trip to the local pool reveals Sammy's torso to be riddled with mysterious bruises. Elsewhere, Jesse breaks the cardinal rule of venturing into the woods with a psycho and finds himself running for cover. He emerges in a clearing where a strange noise enters his brain and gives him the fits. With no physical trauma that would cause a seizure, the doctor suggests the cause was emotional trauma. Oh, but there was some physical trauma in the form of a complex geometric branding that he found on Jesse's skin. While he's forced to admit that it is a bitch in design, he's also a mandatory reporter, so they should expect a visit from CPS sometime in the near future. This is a lot to take in, but Daniel finds a way to cope, which involves running down and assaulting a minor. After he messes with the bull and gets the horns, things begin to settle back down for a moment. And then Sammy comes home. Fed up with all the confusion and uncertainty, Lacy desires answers. Daniel vows that he's gonna get them and deal with it, just like he did today.
You really dealt with things today, all right. Daniel the hero!
Oh, my ego. Later that night, Daniel wakes up to a familiar disturbance and rushes to Sammy's room, and is relieved to find nothing in Sammy's eye sockets. This one was a confirmed dream, and Daniel returns to his monitor with a little brown and starts reviewing the footage again. This time, he takes it frame by frame, until amid the distortion, he finds a shadowy figure. He goes to wake up Lacy to let her know that he's now in a believing state of mind. The next day, they meet up with Mr. Pollard for a consultation. They discover him to have a sort of research display aesthetic going on. Pollard confirms his scholarly specialty is in what he calls the grays, and then begins a series of qualifying questions. These questions were designed to weed out common tropes to uncover the true symptoms of an actual alien visitation. Upon passing the test, he explains basically that the motivations of these beings are unknown, other than they seem to be generally curious about our biology. The result of these studies and experiments seems to be the ruination of their subjects' lives. They control you through implants that most affected people don't even know they have, and that can't be removed. See? If the testing escalates and they begin revealing themselves, that usually indicates they're ready to snatch the first person they made contact with. Concerned for Sammy's safety, Pollard reveals the only real possibility of repelling them is to just try to make the snatching so difficult they decide to move on. With limited options due to the already present risk of losing their kids to CPS, they forge ahead on their own. Daniel seeks out some advice from the gunman, while Lacy adopts the most aggressive rescue dog she can find. Despite bringing home a new pet and a new gun, Jesse is upset by all these changes. He heads off to find comfort in Shelley, who advises that while his dad may be a weirdo, he ain't crazy. In consideration of this, Jesse returns at dusk, ready to fight to protect the family. That evening, they cry their way through a patriotic dinner. The mood is momentarily saved with the sharing of fond memories, but then ruined again by an electromagnetic disturbance. The kids are stashed away upstairs while Daniel waits patiently. Luckily for the aliens, Lacy can be distracted from her post by a mere flashing light that results in her being shut into her bedroom. Everywhere else, screws start popping out of the wood, and Daniel has trouble finding his target. The kid's door starts bulging inward and gives way to Daniel, who regroups with the family back at the bedroom. Despite being on high alert, it takes a moment for them to realize they're surrounded, and when Daniel fires, Jesse finds he and Sammy alone. When Sammy runs off, Jesse follows, but his surroundings convert to the sale house where he finds his parents in dire straits, so he continues to try to catch up with Sammy instead. When he eventually finds him crouching in a hallway, he is snapped out of his hallucination to discover that he was the one they wanted, not Sammy. 3 months later, we find the family in the city, tracking lost children and dealing with attorneys. Unpacking jars loose a few bits of information for Lacy about Jesse's infant allergies, and she has the now pointless revelation that first contact was made with Jesse as a baby, not Sammy. Then the movie ends when Sammy hears Jesse say his name through the walkie-talkie. I have a soft spot for alien movies. I remember as a kid watching Alien Autopsy, Unsolved Mysteries, and other shows like that, and lying in bed terrified afterward. Dark Skies is a pretty good representation of that, and I appreciate that they tried to move away from common tropes to establish their own mythology. However, I'm left feeling somewhat let down by the twist on the main conflict, being that they were coming for Jesse rather than Sammy. That just didn't shock me or feel like a sufficient payoff for the mounting dread. The fact that they were coming for Jesse had no material impact on how the ending unfolded. It would have been more effective to do something like have Jesse split off for a strategic reason to help protect Sammy, and then they discover after all that effort that the Greys weren't actually coming for Sammy. I also think they had a few too many narrative threads running through the film that they had to tie off, and could have done more by focusing on the main plot and deriving character development from how the events were impacting them directly. As an example, maybe Jesse could have lost faith in his father but then rebuilt trust through the process of them dealing with some strange or dangerous situation involving the aliens at their home, rather than have him ride off for a short meeting with Shelley to tell him his dad's not crazy and then having him ride back. It's a relatively small thing, but I think both of these critiques emerge from the fact that there are so many small individual things that happen in this movie. It can get a bit distracting, but the movie was still overall enjoyable and offered up some fresh perspectives. I did recently manage to score a copy of Fire in the Sky, so maybe we'll have a strong point of comparison sometime in the near future. I've heard that one is terrifying. If you've seen either movie, let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'd love to hear about any other really creepy alien abduction movies you're aware of. Before we go, I'd like to give a huge thanks to my donors memorialized in the Hall of Headshots. I have a website set up where you can support the channel through donations or merch. Any donation unlocks uncensored movie reviews of Life Force and Under the Skin, with others to be added over time. And if you enjoyed the video, I would love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.